someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ, and as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is Sunday, May 12th, 2024. I'm Elisa Bieletich-Davis, and we're live on Ancient Faith Radio. Welcome to the program. This is Everyday Orthodox. You know, we just get together here on Sunday nights to meet wonderful, just everyday Orthodox Christians. And it's a lot of fun, actually. I enjoy getting a chance to sit and talk with people. It's kind of like coffee hour. Like if you had some extra time on your hands on a Sunday and you sat down next to someone and just said, well, you know, tell me more about you. We know each other, but I don't know where you're from and what you did. It's amazing. You'll hear the most amazing stories, and I'm going to prove it. If you come here every Sunday night, you'll find that people are pretty fascinating. And, you know, here in North America especially, Orthodoxy is kind of funny because we worship in all these overlapping jurisdictions, right? You could have a neighbor who's Orthodox and not even realize it because they're going to a different parish in a different jurisdiction. They might be worshiping on a different calendar in a different language, and you would never realize that you're just a couple of Orthodox people right next door to each other unless, you know, you see an icon bracelet or something and you ask. But anyway, we're going to get to know people from different jurisdictions, people from different walks of life, people who are all Orthodox but are also diverse. And I like to think that that helps us build some Orthodox unity around here, and we'll all get to know one another. I think it'll be wonderful. So you are welcome, if you like, to call in tonight and join the conversation, as always. The number is 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. I would like to apologize. My voice is a little funny tonight. I have really bad asthma and it's gone crazy, but I'm just delighted that God has granted that I have a voice tonight. So here we go, because this is going to be a fun episode, I think. Matushka Trudy Richter is right here producing the show, and she's taking your calls. So you can call in, again, 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346. You can join the conversation, but you'll start by talking to Matushka Trudy, and she's delightful, so you'll like that. And then I should also tell you that we're streaming on our YouTube channel, the Ancient Faith Ministries channel. We are streaming on Facebook Live. We are streaming on the Ancient Faith Radio app, AFR app. We are streaming on the Ancient Faith Radio website. So we're all over the place. And if you miss a show, the show is always archived on the Ancient Faith Radio website. All right, without any further ado, let me tell you about tonight's guest. Our guest actually is someone that I met at the Antiochian House of Studies. And if you're a regular listener, you know that I've brought on some of our professors and some of my classmates because it's just like a treasure trove of interesting people from around the country who are, you know, all of us, we have in common that we're all interested in the faith. So we're all working on these degrees for various reasons, but we're doing it from the comfort of our own homes. So it works out nicely. But Emanuel Burke is in my classes, actually. And he's an iconographer living and working in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And he actually does his iconography under another name, but I'll let him tell you about that. But he's a parishioner at St. Anthony the Great Orthodox Church. It's Russian Orthodox. Although he's raised Southern Baptist, he actually converted to Orthodoxy just a few years after he encountered iconography. And we see so often on this show, right, for people who are artists especially and who are very visual, iconography becomes this, not just a window to heaven, but kind of a window to the church as well. So thank God. So Emanuel found his calling as an artist through this encounter and began seeking Christ. As he puts it, seeking Christ with light, line, and color, which I think is a beautiful way to say it. But when the show's over, you're going to need to go to the website and check out his work because I just think it's beautiful. So, all right, without any further ado, Emanuel, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I got to say, I'm really impressed with how you rattle off that Ancient Faith phone number. I don't think I could ever do that quite so well. Well done.
Well, I've got it printed on the wall, like right behind the camera. So I'm looking at it. I'm like 1-855 because I worry that I'll mess it up.
Right.
But I'm so glad you came on the show tonight, Emanuel. I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to tell people a little bit about your iconography because it's really, it's beautiful. But to get started, tell us about you. Like, where were you born? Where does your story start?
Sure. So I was born in Athens, Georgia, but my parents, when I was quite young, my parents moved to Western North Carolina And so I grew up in a small town called Canton, which is just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Most people know of Asheville. And so I grew up in Canton and spent most of my life there before moving to Hendersonville. And yeah.
You have almost no Southern accent. Like, just as you said, Hendersonville, I could pick it up just a little. But well, yeah, you'll have to tell me how you lost that in this. But I bet I'll figure it out in the story.
I'm not totally sure because my parents they got it bad, and my mom says Tuesday when she's talking about the day of the week. Yeah,
that's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so you ended up not really growing. You don't remember Georgia at all, then, right? So you really
no. I mean, I have some like there. It's like having these like flash photographs or like Polaroids of our life there, but that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how is Canton? Is Canton a pretty small town, or what is it like?
Oh yes. So
it's a suburb of a kind of small city. So.
Yeah. So for a long time, I guess it was about 100 years, the main industry in the town was a paper mill, and so that's actually where my dad where he worked, and but last year it shut down kind of suddenly. And so, but that's kind of what the town was known for. So you'd drive through Canton and it would smell terrible.
I was going to say, did it smell bad?
It smelled awful. Yeah, it was so bad.
My experience with paper mills is all in the South, and it's all like, I feel like we were in maybe Alabama the first time I ever saw it. My dad was like, paper mill. Because he's from the South, and he's just like, it's a mill town, and it just, why does it smell bad? What is that?
I have no idea. I don't actually know. I think, people thought it was chemicals for a while, but I think it was maybe just the, like the wood pulp or something. I don't really know.
It's so weird, right? You're just turning wood into paper. It feels like it would not be the stinkiest job ever, but kind of is. It's kind of terrible. Yeah. But so it does keep the town small.
That's true.
Keeps real estate reasonable. Like there are a lot. You get used to it living there, though, right?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and I think the main reason my parents moved there was because I had a grandmother and grandfather in the Silva area, which is near Western Carolina University, I think, and then another grandmother who was in the town of Canton, and so that was the main reason being there. And actually, my wife and I, we moved to Hendersonville for a similar reason. It was kind of equidistant, and either to my parents or to like her mother in South Carolina, or Georgia, rather, excuse me.
It's a good strategic thing to do, right? Like you figure, okay, here's where all the grandparents are. We'll put the kids right there.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes sense. Okay, so as you're growing up, were you an artist? Like, what kind of a kid were you? What'd you do?
Yeah, I was an artist. So I would do a lot of just like I would try to copy my favorite things that I would see either on TV or books or whatever, and especially Star Wars. I was really into that, so I would just draw Star Wars comics. But the main thing that really got me hooked, I think it was in kindergarten, was this book, A Very Hungry Caterpillar. I know that seems like a weird thing, but for some reason, I don't know what it was, but that book just really, I don't know, just captured my attention. And so I just, ever since I've just, been interested. So.
Can I say I've always disliked the illustrations in that book? Because they're not really drawn, right? It's like
it's like paper
pieces of paper
put together.
Yeah. And I mean, and I know it's a beloved book, and I love the story, but I always just feel like I don't really get it. But so that captured you. I mean, it's very colorful. It's very beautiful.
Maybe that's what it was. I don't actually know. Right. There's probably some kind of like Jordan Peterson could tell me or something. I don't know.
Let's call him up and find out.
Yeah, right.
But okay. So, but A Very Hungry Caterpillar kind of captured your attention, and it made you think about what? About like how would you say that it changed?
I don't know. I think I think I just was very interested in the way the pictures and the story. I don't know. It's just like something about how it could all be understood in that kind of format of written and then visual, and with iconography, that's a lot of what it is. Like you kind of know the story, and then therefore the image kind of reveals itself to you in that sort of way. So
That makes sense. And that was more present in books than on television. So
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That's cool. So where were you living? Were you kind of like in town, or were you like out in the country? Because it's a small town in the Carolinas. Is it like foresty? What's it like over there?
Well, in the center of town, it's more, I don't know, I guess the suburb, the right word? I don't know. But there's trees everywhere and stuff, but I went to a Christian school for high school, and so I used to walk to that school. I walked in middle school too, now that I think about it. And so that's pretty close to town. But then when I went into, I think, 11th grade, we'd moved more out into the country, so it was just forest, and that's similar to where I'm at now, a little bit more developed, but I definitely prefer the quiet, more woodsy areas for sure.
Yeah, that is nice. So as a kid, were you like out in the woods? Did you enjoy that kind of stuff?
I did.
Yeah.
I'd play in the creek at my grandma's house and just run through the woods. And I was terrified of crawdads because my cousin told me that if they pinched your toe, they wouldn't let go until it rained. And so I was absolutely terrified about that. I thought, oh no, it's never going to let go of my toe if I get pinched by this. And so,
right, especially in summertime, my goodness.
You're right. Yeah.
That's so funny. You know, my dad was from the South and he missed crawdads. We lived in California, but we had a little lake out back, and because we lived in the country for sure. And he went and got a bunch of crawdads and like stocked the lake with them. And then I couldn't go anywhere near the lake because I was afraid of the crawdads because they seem like they're going to pinch your feet. Now, I did not know they wouldn't let go until it rained.
I don't think that's true. I think he just told me that to scare me. So, yeah.
I mean, I feel like just the idea of being pinched by a crawdad was enough. I was out.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything to do with that. But that's so funny. But so, okay, so... did you have siblings? Like, what was your?
Yes, I had I have two younger siblings. One though is like 13 years younger than me. So, but I was close. So I was a bit closer in age to my sister, the middle sister. So I'm the oldest of the three, and so we just would do those kinds of things together. And we stayed at one of my grandmother's houses a lot, and she was a baker, and so we would just like play in the creek, and then we come inside and bake cakes and nice. Southern food, and just this is
great. That's awesome. That's beautiful. All right. So as you're growing up, like what kind of were you like? Did you like school? Did you like your friends at school, or did you hate school? Or were you just waiting to get home at the end of the day?
So I spent like my parents, they I'm so glad they were able to be patient with me because I just drew in my classes all the time. And so I was always getting in trouble for drawing in my classes all the time. And it's not that I didn't like the content of the courses or anything. I don't know, was more interesting to draw. So yeah.
I have a kid who would get in trouble for that, and I was always just like, why is it a problem? Like if I'm sitting there,
I don't know why that was ever a problem, but
it really bothers people. Like they get really worked up about it, and they're drawing. We had to get special permission so she could draw.
Yeah, right.
Class. Like I was like, I think she listens better. Could you just anyway? But so then, what were you drawing? Were you still Was it all Star Wars?
Oh, it was all whatever I'd see on media. But I did have this one experience though. When I was thinking about being in this interview, I had just suddenly recalled this, but I remember sitting in our church on one Sunday, and this woman, she pulled out the Bible and she turned, I think it was Ezekiel with the four living creatures, and she opened it up, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you try drawing this?" And so I started reading the passage. I was like, oh, this thing sounds really freaky, and so I'm going to give it a shot. And so that was kind of my first time doing something like that. And I didn't even know it was a thing. I was just trying to do something fun. But
right, that's cool though. That's really neat. Yeah. I love that. So, was your family religious? What was it? What was that?
Oh,
like?
Yes, yeah. So growing up, I was in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday evening, every Wednesday evening. And then in the summertime, there was almost always a week-long revival, like a tent revival. And
whoa, cool.
Yeah. And so that was like my whole life. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what was your church like? What was,
Uh, so so it's just your typical Southern Baptist church, I guess. I don't know what typical for Southern Baptist is, I guess. Hymns and lots of preaching, and the preaching involves shouting usually. And then occasionally you'd have like a local family bluegrass band or something come and do some music, and that was just a typical thing. But at some point I remember when the pastor I knew most, like that kind of grew up with, when he first started at that church, I remember there was a sudden increase in the number of people who were there. It was a very small church. I mean, I think there were maybe 100 people attending, and then by the time I was in early college, I guess, there were probably 300 to 400 people in that same community.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had a very popular preacher. Did he yell a lot? Was that was it?
No. He was very animated, but he was just I don't know. He was good at speaking. I think because he was kind of from the area and knew the way people were, I guess, or something. He just it felt like somebody that you knew them and you could trust them. And so yeah, he was.
That's nice.
Good pastor.
That's a good quality in a person. I like that. Well, and I'm also curious, what was the tent revival like? Because when you said tent revival, I was thinking,
sure.
Oh, is that charismatic? Like, what is the tent revival like? Like, what is that?
So the basic idea is that you put up this huge tent, and then, right, that's the main thing. And and it's always incredibly hot. It's awful. It's so bad. You just sweat.
It's got to be,
nonstop.
right? Because
yeah.
You're like July in the South, and you got the tent. Oh, man.
Yeah. And so, they would always bring in, different kinds of preachers from the area. Sometimes they'd be more charismatic. Sometimes they'd be more, I don't know how to describe them. There's just Baptist-y or generally evangelical or whatever. Yeah. And so, and they'd always have special music, and it was just a huge event. And, but the main thing all the time, was, like altar calls. I mean, gosh, these altar calls would last like an hour long. And sometimes where they're just begging people to come down and, give their life to Jesus. And,
well, you don't mean like an hour of them begging and nobody coming, but it's like an hour.
No, people would come in.
They're just coming and coming. Yeah.
Right.
And can you answer the altar call more than once? I'm always curious about that.
There was kind of this idea of like rededicating your life.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes they would baptize again, which is non-Baptist for sure. But they would sometimes do that. But because they'd be like, oh, you didn't really mean it the first time. And so let's just
really exuberant. I get that. I don't know. I get that for sure. But okay. Well, that's really cool though. That's interesting. So it's really like the entire community is it's almost like our Lent, but obviously in a very different way.
Yeah.
But in the sense that there's this idea that we need like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need this annual like rededication and reinvigoration and that sort of sense.
Sure.
That's cool. It's too bad they did it in summertime. It really feels like
much better in the winter. Yeah.
Right. Like October would have been a nice time to do that, I think, in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But, I want to tell you, we have a comment on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
We have a greeting to you. Greetings to Emanuel. He is one of the most interesting young Orthodox artists I have met. Greetings from Poland. Emil.
Yes, Father Emiliano. Oh man, he's great. True patron of the arts. He's
beautiful.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, that's neat. How do you know people in Poland?
Well, I'm not sure how he found me actually. It might have just been through Instagram or something, but he found me and wanted to commission an icon. So, that was my first international commission. So
beautiful. Oh, that's neat. Well, thank you, Father. Thanks for messaging us. Christ is risen. And then, okay, so as a kid, so you're just drawing all the time, right? So like, what were you thinking? What were you picturing for when you finally finished school and like people stopped getting mad at you for drawing in class? What were you going to do? What was the plan?
Right. So because of the kind of Baptist-y culture I grew up with, one of the things that happened, I think I was maybe around 12, is that I responded to one of these altar calls and I thought that I was supposed to be a preacher. I thought that's what was supposed to happen. Now, I think there were some good things that came of that, but then I think there were also some bad things as well, because it kind of gives you a weird ego over time. You kind of you don't realize this is happening to you, but it does. And so, so I had this kind of plan to go to, and I did. I went to this Southern Baptist college called Fruitland Baptist Bible College, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a pastor, and so I stayed there, and the plan eventually kind of evolved into wanting to be a missionary to Thailand. And this kind of came about through working at a summer camp, which is where I met my wife. And so that camp was it was kind of during the, are you familiar with the Young Restless Reformed kind of movement?
No, Young Restless?
Yeah, that's what it was called. But it's Mark Driscoll, like John Piper, like all those kind of figures, Acts 29. So that was kind of the ethos of this summer camp, and that's where I kind of became interested in foreign missions, and so cool. that's what I eventually would kind of aspire to do.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, that stuck really, right? Like from age 12 all the way through high school, you're thinking, I'm going to be a pastor. And I have to get, so would you like be talking at school and you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to be a pastor. And you're like, I'm interested to hear what you're saying. I
got kind of embarrassed about it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I wouldn't, especially when I was in high school. And, it was kind of a weird like identity crisis, I guess, because when I was at church, I was the guy that was going to be a pastor. When I was in my job or at school or whatever, I was a different person, because I wanted to be like everyone else, but it was, there was this kind of, like, I knew I was a different person in both those places. But then also I think, maybe other people sensed it too. I'm not sure, but, it was weird. It was like, I got kind of split in two. And so, I kind of tried to conceal that a bit, but then I eventually just kind of, settled into it. Like I kind of leaned more in the direction of, no, I'm committed to being a Christian, and this is what I want to do with my life. And I just kind of moved that way.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting though. And I do think during those years that can happen, because we talk about that at camp and stuff with kids, because it's like you can have kind of your school self and then your family self and your church self, and you've got like these different identities. And especially in those young years, they can feel different, and you can like set up different rules for them, right? Like, well, church me doesn't do that, but school me does that,
right.
And it's sort of,
for sure.
I had a lot of that growing up as well. And it's sort of as an adult, you look back and you're like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's
really
just
silly.
makes your life harder,
Yeah.
But so what were you like at school? So at church, you're like this very devoted, dedicated young teen who's going to be a pastor and eager to help, I would imagine. What were you like in high school? What were you doing?
Well,
some other person?
Right. Well, oh yeah. I mean, like very opposite. Smoking lots of weed. That was my main activity. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was like.
Well, Baptists don't like that. That's not.
No, they don't. No, they do not.
That. I mean, not that there are any Christians who do, but I feel like, I feel like if you're drinking grape juice at communion, odds are pretty intense about that. That's funny.
Yes. I think maybe the taboo of like of that kind of stuff, I think, is what made it more interesting. Similar to like the like purity culture kind of puts like makes like sex taboo, and so then you're kind of more drawn, like, what is this mysterious thing, and you want to know more about it.
Why doesn't anybody want me to know about this?
Exactly.
I gotta go find out. It is funny how our messages just totally backfire with teens, right? Like, don't drink. Oh, really? But okay. So were you like hanging out with kids who are like artists, or what were you like socially? What were you doing?
I mean, basically I was there were a few others who I guess were just interested in art, but no one who took it seriously. And I actually didn't take it very seriously. It was kind of like a hobby, because kind of the messaging, I think this still happens to some extent, kind of the messaging is like, you're either talented at this or you're not talented at this. And even if you are talented, there's no real life in that kind of field. And so don't even bother pursuing it. And I think this kind of gets amplified when you're in a blue collar kind of world, where everyone's profession is just like working hard with their hands. And so for some people that I grew up with, what I do now probably would not be considered real work. And so,
that's how I grew up too. Yeah. Like if you don't have calluses, it wasn't work. You know?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
I was a bit of so it's a bit of a loner. I had friends, but I definitely was like I longed to have like deeper relationships, but and maybe this is because of being kind of two people, but I didn't feel like I had many that were, those kind of real relationships. And that began to change as I got older and was in college, and then working at this summer camp, I began to make better connections. I think it was a result of having kind of committed to this one way of life. Right.
You picked one.
Right.
You picked,
right.
Yeah. And then it is easier, right? When you have that unity in your life, it is just so much simpler. Everything feels less complicated. Plus, probably smoking a lot of weed isn't really good for deep conversations. They feel deep at the time, but they're not.
They're always really dumb. Yeah.
It's a lot of video games and stuff in the end.
Yeah.
But, well, that's funny. Okay, well, so we're going to take a very short break. I want to remind our audience, if you're interested, you're welcome to call us at 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346. If during the break, anybody wants to flip over and look at your website to get a peek at your art before we talk about it in the next half, tell us, what is the website?
So you can go to Alypius, now it's spelled ALYPIUSLOFT, alypiusloft.com. That's kind of my pseudonym, but you can find all of my work there, and there's links to my Instagram and Etsy store and all those kinds of things. So
see everything, and we'll bring it up again later, so if you need to write it down. But we'll be right back in just a moment.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. We venerate your immaculate icon, O good Lord, and entreat you to forgive our offenses, O Christ our God. By your own choice, you were pleased to ascend the cross in the flesh to deliver us, whom you created, from our slavery to the foe. Therefore we cry to you with gratitude. You have filled all things with joy, O our Savior, by coming to save the world. AtheniteUSA.com offers holy icons for those wishing to plant something spiritual in their souls. Immaculate 22-karat gold leaf hand-applied on solid wood. Use the code FAITH for free shipping. Come and see. AtheniteUSA.com. We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich-Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back. We're here tonight with Emanuel Burke, and we're talking actually about his life, of course, but also about his art. He is an iconographer, and he does really neat, very beautiful art, and you should check it out. Alypius Loft. It's ALYPIUSLOFT.com. And you won't be sorry that you did. It's really cool. Okay, so tell me. So then, as you're finishing up high school, you head off to the seminary, to the Baptist. Was it Fruitvale? Is that what it was?
Fruitland. Fruitland, okay. Yes, because of the all the apple orchards.
Ah, nice, very nice. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it must have been kind of I don't know. I'm trying to picture what that's like to go from being a little bit kind of wild at high school, but also having your church life, to then just moving all to it. Did it feel like a countdown coming? Like, I'm going to finish out this dumb youth here, and then I'm going to go be a grown up, and I'm going to, I'm going to change everything August 21st. And then you just knew.
Sort of. Maybe it was a little bit more radical than that, because I remember in my senior year, there was this video from John Piper that went around. I can't remember the name of this. I think it might have been the "Don't Waste Your Life" sermon, like the very first thing. I don't know if you're familiar with this at all.
I know the name John Piper, but I don't.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting though. That's a powerful sermon to hear your senior year of high school, right?
Right. And it's kind of all about kind of giving your whole self to God and to Christ and things like that. So I don't know. There was never okay, I'm making this decision. It just kind of, I don't know, just kind of like moved towards it, I guess. But it was still a struggle. And when I went to Fruitland, I wrestled with that a lot because I knew I wanted that, but then I think because of the what we would now call passions, like those things kind of had roots, and so it was harder to like kind of overcome some of those things, because I'm kind of warring against this other person so that was it was a real challenge. And working at this, I took a break after my first year of college and went to work at this summer camp called Snowbird Wilderness Outfitters. It's in Andrews, North Carolina. And so this is a Christian summer camp, and I was 19 and I was a camp counselor, which is so absurd. I don't understand why they would make a 19-year-old a counselor for youth, but that's what it was.
But you know what? Because older people won't do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And the kids want to hang out with college kids, and But yeah, you're right. It is kind of funny when you think about it, because it's like you're not even figuring yourself out yet.
Right. Yeah. So that was a very formative time in my young adulthood, and met my wife there, and so that I think after that the transition was. It was still rocky, but it began to get smoother, I guess. And by the time I was maybe like 20, 22 or something, I'd pretty much kind of, as much as I could conceive of at the time, stepped into I'm a Christian, I'm going to try to live this particular way and pursue this way of life and so on.
So as you're working through it, I'm interested because, in the Orthodox Church, we have confession, right? So if you were, a college kid struggling like that, you would have these times with your priest where you would sit and talk with him. But of course, you're at a seminary, so there are a lot of people around. Did you have kind of a mentor to help kind of spiritually guide you through it? Or were you just struggling on your own and just, you figured you'd work it out?
Yeah, I was kind of on my own. I tried... I had friends, and I would share things with them, and but
they're also 19-year-olds, right?
Yeah, exactly. And and I would try talking to some of the pastors in my life, but it was, I don't know, it's weird how there's not like a there's no way of dealing with the grief of sin in a kind of I don't want to think of it as like a process or anything like that, but you don't have confession. You don't have, sure. You don't have confession. You don't have these ways of dealing with it, and that are concrete. It's all kind of just believe in Christ more, and it's always ambiguous what that means. And
unless you have a good men's group, right? I think sometimes Protestant churches will have a really good men's group where they're all kind of supporting each other. And if you can get a group that are really honest, which is hard to do because you don't want to be judged, but that is hard. It's interesting to think about that, the idea of that Orthodoxy has this gift for us, this process of repentance that gets built in, not just to confession even, but to Lent and to to all of it's interesting. Okay. So I want to hear about your wife. So you met her at camp.
Oh, sure.
But what was she like? What was she the same age? Was she also a counselor at camp?
Yes, same age. And so when I met her, I asked what her name was, and she said Yam, and I had to ask her to repeat that a couple of times because I was not confident that I had heard her rightly, because I was pretty sure she was saying like the sweet potato, like yam.
Right.
And
You're like,
so,
my grandma makes yams all the time. Like, what are you
right.
talking about?
Yeah. So this
So
is her.
is she a different culture, or is just
Yes.
a nickname?
So this is her nickname that was given to her by her parents in Thailand. So she is Thai, and so her real name is way more difficult to pronounce. But when she told me at camp, though, I had made it kind of a prerogative to try to learn how to say her
bet you did.
name, even though she just goes by Yam, but I tried really hard to learn how to say her name in Thai. And so yes, and then we connected a bit there, but it was not like, I don't think I knew that it was maybe flirtatious or anything. And after camp had ended, I think it was like a year or two, I had just happened to stay in touch with her, and so and then I think it was in, oh geez, my years are all blending together now. So I got COVID brain still. But
it broke all the years. It really did.
It did. So at some point I asked her out, and she said no. And then, yeah. And so then a few months later, we were talking, and she had explained her reasoning and stuff. And she was mentioning that she was going to this wedding of a mutual friend, and she was going to be a bridesmaid. And so I invited myself to this wedding. And yeah. And so I went, so just so that I could, see her. And
did you realize that
yeah.
you understood it was romantic now? But before, you were just like, we're just friends.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, I like yam. Like, that was.
Yeah. It's like she was always there. I don't think I had fully processed that yet,
That's cool though. Okay. So you sneak into this wedding. No, you called your friend and said, you got to let me come to your
I did.
wedding.
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Did you tell him why?
No, I was just like, can I come? And it was actually the bride, and she was like, oh, sure. And so, so I just went, yeah, wore my best. It was, loose fitting, dress clothes. Cause I didn't know what it meant to have a fitted suit or anything like that. So,
right. That's so funny. That's great.
But yeah,
did it work?
It did work. Yes. And so, we, started dating, that same fall, and then I think it was the following year in September, I believe it was, that we got engaged. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And then we got married the following June. So we got married in 2014. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary at the end of June. Yes.
Very nice.
Yeah. It's gone by quick.
It flies, doesn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great, though. Well, it was your wife who reached out and told me. She was like, you got to interview my husband. He's awesome.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah, she's good like that. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So the two of you get married, and I assume everybody's still Baptist.
Oh, yes.
But now, so then you mentioned, though, at camp you were more interested in mission work. Did you end up going to Thailand on mission work, or did you go back to school, or what'd you do?
Briefly, yeah. So I went on one trip in I think 2013 or 2012 or something like that, and I was just by myself. It was a really foolish thing to do, actually, because I contacted somebody on the internet who was in Thailand, and I arranged to go and meet this person. It was not through any organization or anything.
You're like, I'm just gonna come help.
You're right. And because I had this idea of like, I want to know what missions is really like. And so,
like, I don't want an organization telling me how to do it, teaching me, helping me figure out how to properly reach people. I'm just gonna show up like the apostles with, just my shoes and my shirt. Okay, all right. So how'd it go?
Yeah. It was actually great. And it was thankfully, I mean, God was just really kind, I guess, but nothing bad happened. I got to meet some really interesting people, mostly indigenous people in the mountains of like Northeast Thailand.
Cool.
And so it's really neat. And these like small Christian communities, all like generally evangelical. That's, I think, the main presence there. There is a growing Orthodox church in Phuket, I believe.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like
And
one Russian church there. I had a cousin who was there for
yeah,
a
in
while. And
Bangkok.
was like,
Yeah.
I got to go to church. And I was like, well, I think there's one church. But
Right.
so does Yam have family in Thailand? Like, does she have connections
Yes.
still?
Mm-hmm. So she was born there, and then she I'll not tell her whole story because
because she's got
it's
to
interesting to hear her
sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
She'd be great. It'd be a great guest. But yeah, so she moved to the U.S. and her dad and most of her relatives are in Thailand still. So
okay,
in 2017,
so she has family, like immediate family still in Thailand.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2017, we went with our firstborn son to visit again, and both of these times for each of us it was partly about her visiting her family when we went the second time, but we also kind of wanted to discern more about missionary work because we were both really interested in doing that.
Okay, cool. So the same camp had kind of impacted her too, you think, or is she? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so at what point in this story do you find Orthodoxy? Because you guys are like pretty settled with the Baptist life and the
right.
Well, and I guess actually that's / question is, what happened to being a pastor? Like, was it just I want to be maybe the kind of pastor I am as a missionary pastor?
That was pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was, yeah. But things kind of changed with experiencing Thailand. Just a couple of times I did. I mean, I wasn't there for like a long time or anything. But what was really surprising to me was the way religion worked, and this was kind of the first, I guess. I didn't know it at the time, but there was kind of like this inner movement towards like seeing things a different way. And so when I was looking at Thai Buddhists and the way that they were living, there was something about it that seemed way more real than anything that I had experienced as a Baptist. There was like, because it was so widespread, like everybody's practicing it, even people who they couldn't tell you anything about, kind of what they believed, but it was just like, it was so integrated in everything. And there was something about that was beautiful, but I was also like, I don't want to be Buddhist. But it just seemed more real, and in this particular sort of way. And so, this kind of opened me up to desiring to know Christ in that same sort of way, where like every part of your life is integrated with his life, and that it affects the way you do everything. Yeah. And so that was the kind of I think the introduction to that kind of way of seeing reality.
Well, but at that point, did you even know that? I mean, you weren't thinking like
I didn't even
Orthodox
know
because that's more integrated. You're like probably thinking what I thought when I had that revelation, which was, too bad Christianity doesn't have something like that. Maybe I need to figure out how to make it.
Right? Yes. Yeah. It was definitely like that kind of experience. I didn't even know Orthodoxy existed, and so I decided to start doing some research, and the bridge to Orthodoxy was the Anglican tradition. And so I was, reaching out to different people, and I'm kind of hyphenating a lot of this because of time, but I ended up meeting a local Anglican priest who knew I was interested in visual art. And so we met, and he was like, hey, there's a job for artists in the church. And I was like, what? Because I'd never heard anything like that before.
Well, not in the Baptist church, there isn't, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, a lot of us grew up with the feeling that art and imagery shouldn't be invading religion at all, right? That it's a problem.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, what a groundbreaking thing for you to hear, especially as an artist.
Right, exactly. And so the connection, though, was this Orthodox deacon in the area. And I had no idea what Orthodoxy was, but I was like, well, I'm going to take a risk, because I for various reasons had kind of been disenchanted with all the Baptist stuff. So I got connected with him, and he was ordained a couple years later. He's now my priest, Father Photios. And yes, and so he was the one who introduced iconography, and it's really and and I don't even really have the best words to kind of explain my response to seeing icons for the first time. It's it's I don't know. It's like it's I guess like an encounter with maybe it's similar to what I experienced with being in Thailand, but this time it's with Christ rather than with like this like pagan, philosophy. So it was the encounter of the face of Christ, right? And this kind of became the thing I wanted to do with art, just immediately, even though I was Anglican at the time. So, yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I personally, I find like in prayer, it's so helpful to have Christ's face because it really drives home that he's someone else, like that you don't get to make him up, that he's real, right? What were the, I guess, I don't know, describe it a little bit more. That's so interesting. Where were you when you saw icons? Like, were they showing you in a book or did you walk into a church or?
He invited me to the Orthodox Church where he was serving as the deacon. And so he just kind of walked me around to look at the icons and
So you're feeling like the whole effect of the full church and the cloud of witnesses depicted before you, and that's cool. That's really neat.
But they were even with him explaining it though, it was still very mysterious. And so for basically the whole time I was Anglican, I was studying iconography. At first this was just like copying them visually, and then but I wanted to know more than that, kind of what was proper, like what's right or what's wrong or whatever with iconography. And so I didn't know, because as it turns out, when you study iconography, you study Orthodox theology. And so I kind of, evangelized myself, I guess. I remember one Sunday, I was just like, I was getting ready to go to sleep. I was laying in the bed and I just suddenly shot up and I was like, oh shoot, I got evangelized. I had no idea like this Orthodox this Orthodox priest had like evangelized me. I just thought I was like, I don't know, following this like thing, this thread or whatever. And it turns out that like I was being introduced to Christ.
That's so funny.
The whole time.
Well, but I think that can be true too, because the Orthodox are not, it's not just that we're not being obvious, like I'm trying to save your soul, right? I'm trying to get you. But it's also just that like we're not thinking of it that way, but we're just like, look at this. Look at this. Look how neat this is, and then before you know it, you're sucked in. But we weren't trying to suck you in. We just accidentally did. But that's cool. So did you end up like getting formal instruction in iconography, or what ended up happening?
No. So there's not a lot, sadly, in the U.S. It's getting better though. They have the program at St. Vladimir's now with George Cordes, which I hope to do at some point. But
I love his icons so much.
Yeah, he's
George
great.
Cordes. They're good.
But my godfather's an iconographer, and he introduced me to Father Gregory Krug, who's reposed, but his work has been very inspirational as well. And so I just kind of tried to find the some Orthodox iconographers and try to imitate them, and this ended up being like an array of traditions. And so that's kind of how my style, if you want to call it that, kind of developed, was because I was looking at Georgian stuff, I'm looking at Serbian stuff, I'm looking at Coptic and Ethiopian and Greek and Russian. Like I just kind of, and it's a very American thing to do, I guess, but it just kind of like all sort of came together. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it is very American, but that's nice because that's how we're going to have an American style someday.
Sure.
Right? Like over time, over centuries, those things develop, just as the Serbian style or the Georgian style grew out of probably Russian plus just a little of this and that,
Sure.
That's how it has to be. And it's beautiful. I mean, in so many ways, we're establishing what American Orthodox culture will be. Our generations are doing that. I say, how do you describe your style other than it's all these other things mixed together? And I mean, I feel like your eyes, when you say the Coptic, I feel like I can see some Copt in the eyes of your icons,
Sure. Yeah, they're always really big and right.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know exactly. It's I feel like it's a little bit risky to try to to name it, I guess. because I'm just I'm not trying to make a movement or like
Right.
like I'm not trying to like force anything.
Right.
I'm really just
No,
trying
and
to
yeah,
to
that wouldn't be
to
right with
be
iconography, right? Like it's not meant
no,
to
right,
be like that. Yeah.
right. So it's I think it was Saint Sophrony who wrote about um when you sit down and paint the face of Christ, like this is the face of Christ, and that like it kind of doesn't matter in a certain sense that like it was a bad painting or anything like that. It's just this is prayerfully connecting with Christ in this way, and so that's really kind of the main thing for me is to have that communion and to move deeper into that through painting. Um, I think it was the iconographer who's Serbian, Todor Mitrovic. I'm probably butchering his name, but I believe it was him who had said, or had used this verse, unless we become as little children, we cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, and that we should approach iconography in that sort of way, as like children with like wonder of our God, and just earnestly seeking Him like a child seeks his father or his mother, and to have that kind of spirit with our painting.
That's lovely. That's very beautiful. And that I love that idea, because that's what we want, is we want the wonder, and that because it's not just a painting of a person. It's not just a portrait, right? It's an icon.
Right.
It's got this holiness to it. And that's a beautiful way to approach it. I love that. Yeah, I wish I could. I don't know how to describe what your style looks like, so everybody just has to go look. Go look,
Yes.
Alypius Loft, ALYPIUS loft.com, and you can click on this shop. What does the link say? It says something like shop. It takes you to the store. Goes prints, for buying prints,
Yes.
and then commission, if you had a specific one that you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I like your style very much. I think it's very beautiful. But it's so. At what point did you become Orthodox? How long?
Oh yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
I mean, it was kind of incubated for while I was Anglican for I think like 3 years, and it was actually like most people, it was during the pandemic. I had reached a point. I was actually trying to raise funds for us to move to Thailand, and I went to raise because I was still doing that as an Anglican. So I went to this group of evangelicals, and they were living in a commune, and they had this like weird thing where they were like trying to explain the sacrament with like crackers and grape juice, and it just like I was just drove home and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like Orthodoxy it's got to be right. Like it just, I don't know, just like it really affected me. And so I told Yam, I was like, I'm pretty sure like if anything happens, like we move or something changes, I would want to be Orthodox. And because it was kind of hard for us to make that transition to the Anglican world, and then to jump it again into this other completely different world would just be hard. And so God really just solved this for us with the pandemic, because I think it was about a year in, and St. Anthony the Great, our mission church where we attend, and they moved down the street from our house where we were living at the time. And so everyone else is closed. And so I just would walk down to Divine Liturgy and attend. And, eventually Yam agreed to join. And so that's been our home. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting that COVID, it kind of, because you couldn't go to your regular churches. Like I found that in Austin, we had a lot of people who converted to Orthodoxy who maybe wouldn't have been, because if you don't show up at church on Sunday, people know something's up and they're going to ask. Right. But so suddenly when churches closed all the time, and it's like, well, I can go anywhere on YouTube and nobody will see me, and I can like, and then as things get started back and doors open, you kind of just go in. And it is interesting how that was like a pause button that allowed people to kind of scramble and reassess and move around.
Right.
It's an interesting phenomenon, but that's really neat. So you guys have children, right? So do just baptized the kids. And how old were they when you guys came in? Or I guess
So,
chrismated, right? They were probably baptized.
oh yes. So
Oh,
my
no, because
oldest,
they're infants. I see. I'm working
well,
this out in my head.
sorry. Well, we kind of skipped over the Anglican part, but my
Right.
my oldest two, Micaiah and Amos, they were baptized in the Anglican
Okay.
church, and then our youngest Simeon, who's 6 months, he was recently baptized. I can't remember what week it is. I think it was around Theophany, because it was like Saint Ephraim's feast day. It's around the same time. And I have Ephraim, who's my godson, who is also baptized on that day.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, so we're very busy with 8, 6, and then 6 months. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
running around all the time.
That is really, really neat. I love the name Simeon because I just love Saint Simeon so much. He's
Mhm.
just so neat. The God receiver.
That's right.
Well, that's great. This is great. Well, welcome to the church. So you guys have only been here probably what, 3 or 4 years?
It's been barely 3 years, I think. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit more. I think it was 3 years this year. So
Okay.
yeah.
And how are you liking Antiochian House of Studies?
I really love it.
What are you
We're getting
working
close to being done. Well, I'm I'm working as hard as I possibly can to finish everything before Wednesday.
Right? Yeah. Wednesday's the end of semester for us. So it's a little busy. It's a little busy
Yeah.
right now. But yeah. So are you working on a Master's of Theological Studies?
Oh, yes.
Iconography emphasis? Or what?
I got it now. No,
Yeah, you're
so
like, no, I'm working all the time on this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see you.
No, I'm in the St. Stephen's certificate. I wanted to do the MTS, but it's not working out. So we'll see after that.
It's really the same thing,
So-
right? So I anytime you
Right,
can
that's
come
true,
back
that's
and
true.
write a thesis, and then voila, it's a master's.
It's true.
But no, that's very cool. So, but you're doing the iconography emphasis, I assume, or no?
No, I'm not. I part of the reason was because I really just wanted to know liturgical theology, especially well, and to give more attention to the way the word and image kind of meet together, and because that's so important. And I can't disclose the title. This is kind of the last little thing, but there's a title from Ancient Faith that's coming out in the fall I've been working on. So basically for all of Lent and Bright Week, I've been working on some illustrations for a book that they're coming out with. And
Oh, cool.
yes, so
Is it a children's book? Because it's illustrated?
well, children would be able to read it, but it's kind of like, I would describe it as maybe between adults and kids. Like maybe young adult would be like high school age, maybe would be the, or maybe middle school. It's hard to know. I don't know. But it's not a children's book though. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
But yes, there's like 20 illustrations in the cover as well.
Oh, wow.
But it's all related to, studying the lives of these of saints, and then taking those stories and how do I say, not just like depict this person in the kind of like a the way you might take a photograph, but how do I communicate who this person is, like take their life and then show that life in their appearance, and yeah, so that's kind of the whole thing. So.
Oh, that's so neat. That's wonderful. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this book is. It's going to be beautiful, I'm sure, with those illustrations. It's going to be wonderful. And then just to remind our guests, Alypius Loft, Alypius loft.com. The interview is not really complete until you actually see the art, so that you know
That's true.
what we're talking about. It's sort of like the necessary second step to the conversation. But Emanuel, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. This has really been just delightful.
Thank you so much for having me, and especially on Mother's Day.
That's right.
It's a very
Happy
busy
Mother's Day to
Sunday for
Yam.
everybody. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. Happy Mother's Day to Yam, and happy Mother's Day to Matushka Trudy Richter, who's producing the show, and to me, of course. I'm a mom, and to my mom and all of our moms, to all the moms out there. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Sure. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our listeners. And come on back next week and meet another everyday Orthodox Christian. Good night.